My wife and I moved to Oregon about 12 years ago, southwestern Oregon, about 12 years ago, largely due to our appreciation of the beauty and magnificence in our natural environment here. Unfortunately, Congressman Walden and his friends in Washington, D.C. have failed to protect us from the man-made causes of significant global warming and climate change. Now, what this means to me is that over the course of our children's lifetime, there is a high probability that our beautiful forests in Oregon will die. Isn't that terrible? You see, my friends, the environmental crisis is actually the #1 health care hazard of the 21st century. Walden has done nothing to stop it. Shame on you, Walden. Shame on you for voting for the fossil fuel industry and the big oil companies. But Walden has done nothing to help the growing clean energy movement that can generate millions of jobs for everybody. Shame on you, Walden. Shame on you for opening our gorgeous Oregon coastline to the dangers, risks, and hazards of offshore drilling. Time for you to go, Walden. Time for you to go. Time for you to go.
When politicians put their campaign contributors before their constituents, democracy is broken. I saw this most evident when Greg Walden accepted money from communications companies, net providers, telecoms, and all of that is to say, hey, if you're a company, you should get high-speed internet. If you're an average student, well, good luck. Whatever speed's left over, that's your bandwidth, and that's what you get. And that might be long-term the difference between my students getting their homework assignments done and being interested in being lifelong learners and not being lifelong learners. And so my question for Greg Walden is, why do you believe there should be 2 different speeds of internet? Why shouldn't our students be empowered to be great information seekers? Greg Walden also cut health care to the middle class. The Affordable Care Act was a wonderful piece of legislation because it resulted in everybody having skin in the game, everybody having to pay something for their insurance. Most industrialized democracies, that's the way they work. And yet, Greg made sure to try and repeal as much of that as possible and then only put health care for kids. Tell me, why, Mr. Walden, isn't health care good for kids' parents, too? Aren't parents aren't they being the ones that juggle, do I pay for my health care or do I put food on the table for my family? Help me understand that, Mr. Walden.
I'm a naval veteran, and I'm here to talk about how disturbed I am by what's going on in Washington. Greg Walden has been bad in the past on environment and health care, and now he's stepped it up a notch. Since he's head of the Energy Committee, he's become Trump's lapdog, and he's doing everything against us and everything for special interests, and especially the fossil fuel industry.
How many times did the Republicans vote down President Obama's jobs bill? For 8 years, every year, he presented a jobs bill to cover infrastructure, to rebuild pipelines, to help with the energy grid, and every year the Republicans voted it down. We did not need a tax break for the wealthy. We need to invest in affordable care, affordable housing, and a jobs bill. Democrats believe in investing in people. They care about people. That's why I'm a Democrat.
My family has always been Democrats as far back as I can remember, and they've always been gun owners as far back as I can remember. My great-grandfather packed a gun with him in his pocket everywhere he went. My grandfather had a gun strapped under his steering wheel of his car. My dad was a pharmacy owner, and he carried quite a bit of cash around with him, and he had the keys to the pharmacy, which is something that nefarious people would like to get their hands on. And so he packed a gun with him also. So Democrats do pack guns, it's true. When I was a kid growing up, when we went to the gun store, you would see deer rifles there, bolt action rifles, lever action rifles, and you would see handguns, usually 6-shooters, okay? You would see occasionally a military rifle like an M1, or maybe an old Colt 45, military Colt 45, or some other kind of foreign pistol there. But nothing like what you see in gun stores today. When you walk in all kinds of stores, Bi-Mart, Fred Meyer, Walmart, you're confronted with whole racks of military looking weapons, okay? Things based on an AR-15 platform, a variety of different guns like that, AK-47 type weapons. In the handgun department, it's all pistols. It's all high capacity 9mm, 10mm pistols. A completely different kind of weaponry that I grew up with when I was a kid. It used to be the NRA would talk about how the Democrats are coming for your guns and you're not going to be able to go hunting anymore. Now it's different. Now it's the Democrats are coming for your guns and you're not going to have any guns, period. They're going to try to take any kind of gun you've got away from you. The whole idea of hunting is something that's gone altogether from the discussion. We need to get some different legislators in our government if we're going to make some changes and be able to fight the NRA. We have some pretty good legislators here in Oregon. We do have one Republican legislator, Greg Walden, and he's a kind of an NRA favorite. He's got an A rating from the NRA. He's got a 93% rating, which means he votes whatever they want 93% of the time. And we need to get Greg Walden out of office and replace him with somebody else who's not going to be beholden to the NRA. He's also one of the top 20 recipients of donations for campaign donations. So we need to get somebody else in there to replace him.
Greg Walden does not represent my values. His voting record for women is probably about 40%. For LGBT values is very low. His voting record on environmental issues is almost non-existent. He has a terrible voting record on health care. He has voted over and over and over again to eliminate the Affordable Care Act. My daughter is on the Affordable Care Act, well, the Oregon Health Plan, which is associated with the ACA. And she would be in terrible straits if she weren't. She has 2 beautiful children, one that's 21 months old, a little boy, and a little girl that's 6 months old. Before she had her little boy, I think the week before she was supposed to deliver, she had these terrible pains in her chest. We took her to the hospital. Her blood pressure was extremely elevated. Her organs were starting to shut down, so she had preeclampsia, and so they did emergency C-section, and she stayed in the hospital for a couple days, and then she brought home a beautiful little boy. But she would have had huge healthcare costs, medical bills, if it weren't for the healthcare that was provided by the government. Walden is a person that wants to do away with this. He wants to do away with Medicaid. He wants to do away with Medicare, or at least make it something that's going to make it harder for people like you and I. And I think it's time that Walden be replaced.
On the subject of health care, on a personal matter, my son has cerebral palsy with an autism spectrum, and he will need supports for the rest of his life. So when I'm gone and when his father is gone, there will be strangers that will be taking care of my child. And Greg Walden, he doesn't care about that. And to take health care away from folks like my son puts them in what we used to do back in the 60s and 70s, was to warehouse them. He deserves a quality of life. This hand that he was dealt was not his fault. Why should he be punished because of something that he had no control over? And Greg Walden doesn't care. He doesn't care that that could happen to my son. And so I'm fighting for his future, for his health care, so that he can have a quality of life. Without it, he would be stuck at home. His world would be four walls and a roof. And this is not fair. This is not something that he chose. And so I am hoping that I have a voice, that I can speak for him and fight to keep his health care and health care of all the other folks that have issues that they deal with every day. So please, fight for health care. Thank you.
There's so many reasons why I'm a Democrat. It starts with Ronald Reagan, basically, and what he did to he drove the homeless people out there. Ronald Reagan is the reason there are cardboard people on the street, folks. That's it, plain and simple. He closed mental hospitals as a California governor, and then he closed them nationwide when he became president. And then he did a really lousy job with the economy. People think he did a good job, but he didn't. Bill Clinton came in and fixed up his mess. When Bill got there, we were running a tremendous deficit and the national debt was growing. When Reagan took over, the national debt was under $1 trillion. It was like 780 billion, something like that. When he left, it was 3.3 trillion. And then when Daddy Bush left, it was over 5 trillion. Well, Bill got in there and it took him a few years, but with working and being bipartisan and working with Republicans and Democrats in Congress, they managed to get bills passed to get a reasonable tax plan out there so that everybody paid an even and fair amount, and the economy grew and businesses grew and businesses did good and big businesses did good and everybody was doing good. And he devised it so that at the end of all that, near the end of his term, with 2 years to go, there was actually a budget surplus and it started paying down the national debt, folks. It was paying down the national debt. Had that been left alone when the Bush administration came in, the national debt would have been paid off in late 2011 or 2012. So imagine if we had done that, if we had let that tax plan in place and paid off the national debt. Then you can really easily go out there and make tax cuts for everybody. You can spread it more evenly, you can take less from the higher income earners, and there's right there, common sense, straightforward, plain and simple. The Democrats are better at handling money, which is, something that was not believed. It was always believed that the Republicans were better. It's just not true. And now, here we are again. Now we got another Republican in office, blowing up the debt again. They just added $150 billion a year to the deficit. So it's getting near $1 trillion again. And it's crazy. And there's one of the big reasons why I'm a Democrat.
Why am I a Democrat? Equal rights for all, health care for all, for healthy communities, gun safety, not control or banning guns, and saving our planet, mostly for my grandchildren. This thing doesn't stop with us. And Greg Walden, he doesn't have our interests at heart. It's all about the money. Anything that he cares about is about money. If you follow his trail, it's special interests, big pharma, oil and gas. It's not about Oregon, and it's not about our communities, especially our rural communities. We have been forgotten, and we need to fight. We need to stand up for what we believe in, for our communities, and for our children, our grandchildren, and their children. This does not stop with us. Please make a stand. Please vote. You are one vote, but your vote counts. It really does. We can make the difference. We can turn this around. For more information, please go to Josephine County democrats.org. Go to the Action Committee. There'll be a drop down that says Unelect Walden. It has all the information that you need to know on where he gets his money from and where his interests truly lie.